So we're on to work. Now we've touched on a lot of things around work already. But actually, what did you want to be when you grew up?
No idea. I think I wanted to go to sea. I was quite keen on joining the whaling fleet, everything to do with sea. I tried to not apply for, but ask for the requirements to join the Royal Navy. And unfortunately, I'm colorblind. And so apparently, I wouldn't be a deck officer. I didn't really fancy working in the engine rooms or filling torpedo tubes. And when I came back from America and I had to decide what to do at university, my father was building new science laboratories at the school, and the major contractor was building those science laboratories. And my dad asked them whether they would talk to me about the possibility of going into construction. And I thought construction, outdoor life, what sort of stuff. And so they agreed. I don't know whether it was nepotism because my father was a client, but they agreed to take me on. And I think we mentioned before as a factotum on a big construction site where I think I pulled my weight. And they then sent me a bursary to university. And I enjoyed construction. I enjoyed erecting tower cranes and doing all these crazy things. Didn't have a fear of heights in those days. I do now. And that's what led me into career. And then from the time I joined LTA Construction, after that, things just took off. I mean, as we said before, by early 1970, when I was 26, I was MD of a substantial company with 1,700 employees. And then the group kept on throwing me out. I took over Cape Town, I took over Natal, I took over all of the branch areas and some of the specialist engineering businesses. And by the time I was 30, I was looking at 7 companies with 7,500 employees, traveling all the time up and down the coast, visiting them. And then I got this opportunity to come to the UK. Now, we'd had a couple of good holidays in the UK, and we'd seen Hare and Calcutta and all these exciting things and travel on a tube. And we were just happy to come here for a year or two. We were asked on a Tuesday, and by Thursday we'd all flown over, and we'd picked schools for you and for Tash. And we came back packed up, and we were in the UK within a week. The idea was a 2-year assignment to take over this company. 2 years became 5 years because it was a mess. And I tried to buy the company with a colleague. We tried to buy the company out when the RAND collapsed. But we then got into property development in London. We built the first big tower blocks in London Docklands. Everything happened strangely with me, but those 3 tower blocks were blown up by the IRA. So that sort of little vignette on life as it happens to me as it works out. We sold the first building to the Daily Telegraph, and the second building we sold to a property developer called Godfrey Bradman. And he called me in on a Friday to talk to me. And he was very aggressive, asking me about my background. And I said, I'm here to talk about selling my building to you, not because we've already sold it to 7 Canadian investors. And he actually employed 24 lawyers over the weekend to complete the documentation because he had a tax issue he was trying to shelter. He died on Christmas Day last year. He was quite a big influence in my life. And the Monday after the transaction, the headhunter rang me and said, you don't know it yet, but you're going to work for Mr. Bradman. And so I ended up working for Mr. Bradman. He said, you can name your salary, do whatever you like. So I was presented in the week with a new BMW and a car phone, which I'd never seen before. And we were in business, in property development in London. Up until then, it had been construction all over the world. Hong Kong, Sudan, spent 5 weeks in Sudan trying to sort a power station out. We had work in the Micronesian Islands. We had work in the Far East. Sort of international construction business. So now I was I'd started in property in the UK, and I was full-time on property. And I was a divisional managing director for a company called Rosehall. And we took a company, Godfrey Bradman took a company that was worth 250,000 Shell on the stock market and turned it into a company at a market cap of 1.5 billion or something at peak. and then went to bankruptcy in the crash, the property crash. We developed Broadgate in the city, Ludgate Hill. The huge big shopping centres we did all over the place. It was at one stage we had 112 schemes in construction, and it was just a heady time for all of us. And then towards the end of that in 1988, we won the competition for the King's Cross project with 6 landowners, British Rail and everybody else, and it's still, as far as I know, the biggest planning application ever gone through in Britain. And it was worth, in those days, in 1988, it was estimated to be a 6 billion, including building a new station for the fast link to the Channel Tunnel. And we spent £40 million, £7 million on the competition, and £40 million on developing the competition into a planning application, and got planning. And I was the chief executive for that period. Very difficult with all different landowners, but we developed a new park and everything was going to happen there. And then it all went to naught because they decided not to route the Channel Tunnel train under King's Cross, but they into St Pancras, and that meant chopping the site up and killing our park. We worked with Lord Foster and Skidmore and Merrill. The anecdotes about that story are enormous, including the fact that we used WordPerfect as a spell check in those days, and somebody discovered that because we had 2 big master plans in a 6-volume document, the word master plan was used numerous times, and spell check had changed it to masturbate. And that was a sudden rush to get it all sorted out to get to the printers. We were sending £2,500 every hour to keep the printers in Wapping from disappearing so we could get the competition in. It was a heady saga at the height of the property boom in the UK, and we won the competition. And we finally got a contract signed with the government to proceed with it, and then I say it was lost because of the change in the Channel Tunnel. From then on, it was headhunted for a variety of things in companies. I think all told, I've been probably chairman of 300 companies. I've bought 17 and sold 30. I've raised money for 9 private equity schemes, some of which have been wildly successful, but others have bombed out. That's what private equity is all about. But it's been a fantastic experience from day one. Done lots of work all over Africa, in fact, worked in all 6 continents. I've been a chairman of an Indian public company and an Australian public company. And I've been directors of companies in America and Germany, Holland, Belgium. And it's been an incredible career. I've had lunch with Margaret Thatcher. I've dealt with, I think, 8 heads of state. I've sung karaoke. I've sung My Way with the president of Indonesia, President Habibie, on his birthday. Don't ask me to repeat. I think we did a lot against international relations. You name it. £1 billion schemes in Malaysia. I signed the contract for the Kuala Lumpur airport, which is like $3.5 billion. All those things have been an incredible experience from day one, and things have just fallen in. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of hard hours. I've never really got the financial benefits of all that effort. I've made money for other people, but it's been fun, and I've always had you and Tash and Mum to come home to.
So I mean, that's a lot of achievements. Does any of them, out of singly, spring to mind that's your greatest achievement in professional career?
I think I've been involved in 7 major mediations, including one between the Bank of Reconstruction and Development, where I was the mediator, and the UK government and the design team. That was really interesting because everybody accepted my ruling, and one of the architects actually had my summary of my ruling framed on his wall. He said it had been such fun going through the mediation. I think the final settlement of the planning application at King's Cross. The King's Cross got so many anecdotes. When we delivered the planning application in a 3-ton truck van with all these volumes of documents, the press came out and they took pictures of us standing on the stage, on the steps of Camden Town Hall. And I said to the leader of Camden Council, obviously very left-wing, I said to him, we spent all these millions of pounds on producing this document. You'll never be able to read it. In fact, I took the opportunity to kill my mother-in-law, and I stuck in one of the boxes, because they all came in big boxes. And because you'll never get to her box, I'm sure. And then 2 days later, the empty box got delivered to my office. And when I opened it, they had a spring-mounted blow-up skeleton that shot out of the box. You know, so many anecdotes like that. Jeremy Corbyn, I spent a day with Jeremy Corbyn on the site. I spent with Paddy Ashdown. I spent with Lord Mandelson. All came round to look at the site. But single episode that I'm referring to was the settlement of the amount of office quantum on that site. We've been going around in circles looking at views from Primrose Hills and everything else. And I had the ex-president of the RIBA working for me full-time on site. And we had this meeting where we had 6 lawyers on our side. They had planning lawyers, everything else. And we were just going around in circles. And I said, look, you write down on a piece of paper the absolute maximum you would allow of office space on this development that you think you could get through your politicians. And I'll write down the least amount of development that we will survive on. And if they're more than 250,000 square feet apart, then we'll go to a full planning appeal and it'll take years. And also the planning benefit, the training program, we had 17 million in for a training program and everything else, all that will go by the wayside. It'll be nothing for local people. You go away and do it. And you think that's a fairly, they agreed to do it. Lord Hart, who was a principal lawyer for us, was agitated about this because, you know, things should be settled in planning law. I said, no, we're in a horse trading situation. And they went out the room. All that. We had 24 full-time planning officers, full-time on this job. And the lead ones went out. And you'd think they'd come back in about 5 minutes. Oh, it's out for hours. They kept on coming back and saying, what happens if we put a bigger quantity than you've got for the minimum? Then what do we do? I said, we'll split the difference. And they'd go away again. And eventually they came back and we turned the 2 pieces of paper the right way up. And they were exactly 250,000 square feet apart, and we split the difference. And that's how we went and got planning permission. And remember, there was an Act of Parliament. We had to put an Act of Parliament through. The King's Cross Railway Bill of 1988. It's the longest bill ever before Parliament. It went through 5 sessions of Parliament. We had 5 all-night debates. And we had a situation where the previous longest bill before a First House committee hearing was the Liverpool Dock and Harbour Bill that lasted for 28 days before the First House committee. We lasted 56 days before the First House committee. We had George Galloway and Hamilton, who later disgraced for taking favours from the Arabs, on the committee, and we sat for 56 days before the committee. The House of Lords, the longest committee meeting in the House of Lords on a bill was 4 days, and we went 17 days. And we actually got the bill through Parliament to give the rights of way. We actually got the planning permission, minded the grant from the council against the opposition of 2,500 signatures to the organisations under the leadership of the King's Cross Railway Lands Group. I'd say that I'll show you, there's a book written about it. And the anecdotes about that experience were just too amazing. Anyway, that's me. I won't say I've enjoyed it all. There's been moments of high stress, obviously, and a lot of travel. Up to 1 million miles on British Airways. And it's obviously put some strain on the family. They've managed to survive, or you can comment on that. but it's been a great life. But the main thing is we've ended up with an absolutely perfect family environment. All the family on all sides get on well together. They communicate daily. There is no black sheep. There's some interesting characters, but there's no black sheep on that side. And we've ended up with friends that have gone back 50 years. We've got friends from 50, 55 years ago who are still our friends and still communicate on almost a daily basis. People like Greg and stuff almost communicate on a daily basis. And that, if that's anybody has any legacy in life, it's nothing to do with how much money we made or how many people we fired or how many people we promoted. It's to do with ending up with fantastic family, a home that we love, or two homes that we love, and a family who is just very special.
So talking of friends from time back as well, Len Salter also had a question in regards to work, and actually it was, what is your recollection of leading a group of directors blindfolded through an obstacle course in the New Forest?
Always been very strong on team building exercises, but that was really, really strange. There's a team buildership leadership company that operates out of the Beaulieu River, somewhere up there in the forest, and it includes doing things you wouldn't like to do, which is climb through, on those forest climbs and on tight ropes and that sort of stuff. And one of the things to illustrate leadership was to blindfold us with big goggles in teams of 4 or something like that. And there you have to follow a rope. And the rope takes you through pipes and into trenches and all sorts of things, because you're completely blindfolded. And you get obstacles that appear. And our building director was behind us. And I was at one end, so there's 4. And of course, every time you come to you may have to turn around and go back because you've gone down a blind alley, in which case you're the tail end and the other else is the leader. So in this case, I'm the leader and I'm leading forward, and I have to keep telling people what I'm finding. So I found a pipe. I think I can get my shoulders into it. And then I go along, we go through the pipe, and then I said, I found a tire, a huge tractor tire. I found a tire. I'm climbing over it because you've got to keep them informed as well. So now there's all the other directors are all standing and watching this. So I mean, for us it's blindness, but for them they can see everything. And I climb up the tire, and the tire was a pole in the middle of it, like this. So, and you get to a certain thing, the tire tips, and I go over, and I scream, you see, and my building manager grabs to reach me and grabs me by the balls. So in front of the entire board, there am I screaming for 2 reasons. One, I don't know what I'm falling into, and somebody hanging on my balls in the back. And of course, they can see it. We can't see a bloody thing. That's the incident. Let me tell you another thing about Len. Len is an incredible English gentleman type. I mean, and an unbelievably good friend and solid person. That I became chairman of his company, and we eventually sold it and all made a lot of money. He was a motorcyclist. Now you can't imagine, there's Len, upright, tall, good-looking man, wears 3-piece suits, and always particular, but he drives a 200-mile-an-hour motorbike, and he has matching leathers and the whole catastrophe. He goes every year. And when we sold the company to the French, which is another long saga.
Another question actually about that.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but when we sold it to the French thought that because he was such a motorcycle enthusiast, they'd buy him a Harley Davidson limited edition with flames down the side. And of course, you either have a lightweight Honda Firebird bike that you do track time with it, light and fluffy and does 200 miles an hour, or you have a Harley Davidson, which is basically a tour bike. And so he got this bike, and they roared onto the stage when his retirement function. Roar onto the stage with one of the other guys. And he said, I didn't know what to do. I phoned my friends that we go motorcycling to Le Mans every year, and I phoned them and said, you won't believe what the companies bought me for a farewell gift. They bought me a Harley Davidson. And the guy said, don't ever ring this number again. Put the phone down. Completely different animals. No, Len was amazing. What tell us about the...
No, it's actually, he also said, what was your real recollection when you were passionately kissed by a French man upon completion of the Waring sale in 2007.
Okay. Whenever you're selling a company, you've got people who are keen to buy, and they came in. We went out for an auction, and they came in at the highest price, much more than we anticipated actually that we would probably get. To the extent that, excuse me, like I sent the price we've been offered to the venture capitalist from Gresham Trust, Ken Lawrence, and I sent him and said they've offered us X million. And he wrote back the shortest email I've ever had. It just said, fuck, exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
Have to edit that
No,
out.
no, keep it. So anyway, so then having agreed the price, I've got to defend the price. So Len and I have got to defend the price. So they come in endlessly and say, well, don't think you're going to get the money for this project, and have you got provisions for this and everything else. And we defended that price like hell. And they brought in a accountant from the head office in Paris. Bouygues, a huge company, into telecoms and everything else. And he came across and he was giving us a hard time. So this game's come back to being nice to people. So eventually I said, look, they had to rush to get the plane to fly back to Paris. So you do negotiation, you would never allow people to be in time, because they're getting time constrained and they're asking all these difficult questions. And this guy's getting quite agitated. So we get up from the table and they said they've got to go. I said, look, it's been a tough day, but we must remain friends. We've got to remain friends of this deal. And I went to this accountant and I hugged him and gave him a big kiss. And he nearly dropped dead, because so they then go out to reception to get their cabs. And they're waiting for the cabs in reception. And this guy's standing off to one side from the rest of the team. And he's standing there, and the receptionist tells me, he said, today has been a big day. I have kissed my first chairman.
Yeah, that's what he said.
I've kissed my first chairman. But the other funny anecdote about that, it became the local accountant, Frenchman, local accountant, became very friendly with me, and he wanted to, after the deal was done and dusted, he wanted to, I invited him down to stay on the boat. And he said, what must I bring? Must I bring something? I said, you're a Frenchman, I don't need to bring everything, we've catered for all the food. But I said jokingly, a case of French champagne never went amiss. So that Friday afternoon he comes down to the boat and you see him staggering down the pontoon carrying a case of champagne.
Oh, wonderful.
And I said to him, I didn't mean it. He said, it's all right to my girlfriend. She owns a champagne house. For her it is nothing. So he had this case of champagne. It was a great relationship, and Len's carried on working for them. He's built this big hotel in the old near Admiralty Arch, this 9-star hotel or whatever it is that he's been working. They've always employed him on a consultancy basis to sort out problems. He's a terrific guy, terrific construction guy, and such a friend.
Well, that wraps up the work segment as well.
Well, there's only things left as dotage, decomposition, and death.
Yeah.